Hello, and welcome to today's Carillon Conversation. I'm Dr. Shanequa Fleming, and today we'll be talking about letting go of self limiting beliefs. It's interesting because the title of the talk, in and of itself, says it all. And so when we think about this time that we find ourselves in and all the things that are happening around us, limiting beliefs really show up in so many different ways. In fact, I was just working with a client earlier today, conducting a strategy session, and what I realized is we harp on this whole notion of uncertainty, and the reality of it is there is a lot of uncertainty in the world right now, but there's a lot more that we do know that we often don't even give ourselves credit for. And so as we, really walk through and look at limiting beliefs today, I want to call your attention to a few things. And the first thing is, how do we even get to a point where we feel limited? How do we even get to a point where our thoughts are really the guiding force, or the thing, if you will, that's helping us or navigating for us our way through life, or the way we work, or anything for that matter? You see, the self-conscious mind, the subconscious, excuse me, and it becomes self-conscious if you're not careful, right? But the subconscious mind really is incredibly powerful. And, as I said in the description, it kind of creates this invisible edge that is often difficult for us to go beyond it. And I refer to it as an invisible edge because we often don't see it. And so you might think to yourself, like, where does this come from? Like, how do we even get these limiting beliefs? And there are a few things I want to talk about with that today, but I want to, before we really dive deep into this, I want you just to stop and think about where you are right now and why you chose to register for this conversation in the first place. And so that's a good place to start from, because whatever it is that brought you to this conversation with me today, and one thing I don't like about it is I like to talk back to you. So please, communicate with me in the chat, and when I get to the Q&A session, Q&A session of the talk, I'd be more than happy to look at what you put there and respond to those questions, or address those comments that you may put there. But going back to that, I want you to think about what caused you to register for this talk today, and I want you to think about what has been limiting you. And so really, the answer to whether we can do something or we won't do something or we can do something, it really is between our ears and it's in our mind. And so first thing we want to do is really discover what is the source, or what are the sources of these limiting beliefs. And so where do they really come from? And so oftentimes it's our experiences, it's, our family, they come from friends, they come from past mistakes, they might come from the fact that we've never seen it before. And so therefore we don't think it can be done, or more importantly, that we can do it. And so those limiting beliefs are, again, we don't see them, but we often hear a soft voice or a loud voice saying, you can't do that. It's not for you. It's possible, but not for someone with your background, or you don't have enough skills to do that. And so, this whole thing comes in where we start to feel like an imposter, or we start to feel like we don't belong. And one of the things I realize, and I say to people all the time, is you may never fit in, but you always belong. And so limiting beliefs are, those things that keep us stuck in that pattern of being mediocre, or just really not being bold about what it is we want to do, or being fearful. And so, if you come from a background where things have always been available to you, or they've always been easy for you, you tend not to stop and think about, can I do this or can't I do that? Or sometimes you're just really wired in that way, where you can think about things beyond what you see before you. That tends to be one of my superpowers. Like I see possibilities and I see opportunities beyond what might be there for the eye to see. I can look at really complex things and make them simple. I can look at things and create tons of ideas around how it can be done and different ways it can be done. And I realized that that's not a skill or that's not a strength that everyone has. And so what happens on the other side of that are those thoughts that tell you you can't do it, even though there's tons and tons of evidence that will show you how you've done it before and that you are in fact probably the best person to do it. Okay, I'm not sure what's happening. So we've been having a few little technical glitches today. So if there's something that causes me to pause, it's because we've been having a few glitches. So let's get back to, what we were talking about. So the first thing we've got to do is identify those beliefs that are holding us back. So I want you, if you have a piece of paper, I want you to write this down. I want you to write down, what would you do if you knew that the how was already taken care of and that your success was an absolute guarantee? What would you do? I want you to write that down. And then I want you to write down, why haven't you done it to this point? So what would you do if you knew everything that had to do with how you would get it done was taken care of? And then that second part that I wanted you to write down was, why haven't you done it yet? And I'm going to give you a minute to write there. And as you're writing, everything that you write down on the paper from this point on in terms of why you haven't done it yet, those are all limiting beliefs. Yes, you might say that, well, I haven't done it because I don't have the money, I don't have the support, I don't have the time, they're not really excuses. They become an excuse if we do nothing with what we talk about today. Then they become an excuse. But right now they're a limiting belief. And because I'm helping you to bring it to your consciousness, we can flip these things inside out should you choose to do that. So anything beyond this point, it becomes an excuse. Right now, we're going to call it a limiting belief. So whatever it is there, for example, if it's I don't have enough money, there's a belief, there's an experience, there's a value that has been possibly passed down to you in terms of what money is and what it means and how it can be a barrier instead of a tool to you doing and getting and having and being all that you want. If it's time, then there's something there as it relates to how you prioritize your time and how you decide you're going to do the things that are important to you. And there's a potential barrier there that tells you your time is not valuable, or the way that you spend your time, you've not been intentional about making sure those moments matter and that everything that you decide to do is reflective of what's very important to you or most important to you. And so if it's because you don't feel you have the network, then there's a story that you are telling yourself that has potentially or perhaps been shaped by the experiences you've had, or even the failures that you've had, or the things that may not have turned out the way that you would have liked for them to have turned out for you. And so when you think about that, those turn into those limiting beliefs. And every time something comes up that looks like, that feels like, that sounds like, that could possibly be a similar situation, we tend to shy away from that. And it creates a thicker layer of that invisible edge for us to get beyond. And so when we think about that, the only way that we're going to be able to move forward is to break out of that thinking, And how do we break out of that thinking? So we break out of that thinking by, number one, rewiring those beliefs that we have about all of those reasons you wrote down as to why you can't do what it is that you said you really would do if you knew that there was no way you could fail, or if you knew that everything that you desired to have, the how was already taken care of. And so the way we rewire that is, oftentimes we see people talk about writing an affirmation. And I'm going to say something that's going to sound quite polarizing, but an affirmation isn't always as powerful as most people think they are, especially if that affirmation is written from a place of non-belief, right? So if you feel that you are totally disconnected from where you want to be or what you want to have or where you want to go, then saying that you are going to have that thing or saying that you're going to be whatever it is that's not really going to shift your energy to having, being, or doing those things, right? Because that's a huge energetic shift to go from this is not possible at all to I am absolutely going to be everything that I've said that I want to be, do, or have. And I'm not saying it's impossible forever. I'm just saying in that moment, that shift is unrealistic. And so the first thing, if you're going to rewire those beliefs, you got to shift it just a bit for you to get beyond the impossible to there is an opportunity for me to do this, to really thinking about it. You know what? There once was a limit, but I'm open to what's possible for me. That's a huge shift in and of itself versus this isn't possible for me and I can have everything that I want. So the first shift is I'm open to all of the possibilities and all of the things that I once thought would or could limit me. I'm open to the possibilities of what I can have and what I will be and what I can do. And so, and once you get there, then you can make another shift when that feels natural and that feels comfortable, from I'm open to I'm beginning to act on the things that I desire, I want, I can have, I can be. And when you make that shift, I'm beginning to see more and more each day that these things are possible for me. And then when you get to I can see, I'm beginning to experience and have experiences that show me that much of what I want is available to me. And so you're shifting little by little, instead of telling yourself that something you thought could not happen at all, that all of a sudden, because we wrote an affirmation, that it's going to happen overnight. And that's one of the things I see that people really don't understand, and they really kind of lead a lot of people down the wrong path in terms of how do you shift your thoughts and your thinking. The other thing is really reprogramming your thinking about what's possible. So I gave you some examples of how to do that. Another way you can reprogram your thinking about what's possible, and this is a fun way to do it, change your environment. Sometimes you got to put yourself in an environment that reminds you of what your possibilities are, and that helps you to see and helps you to feel different about what it is you want to have. You got to feel and experience yourself in that desired future that you're creating. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What are some of the smells that you might want to have in your environment that gets you excited about, where you're going or what you're creating? Because without that, you continue to have all of those things that reinforce those limiting beliefs that say, this doesn't look like a place that I can go. This doesn't sound like something that I can do. This doesn't feel like something I can have. And so you want to start to have that conversation with yourself and really quiet that inner saboteur, right? Because we all have that inner saboteur or that gremlin on our shoulder that reminds you of all the times in the past when it didn't work, that tells you, see, these are all the reason that you shouldn't have even tried. Because every time you try something good, there's always something to remind you that it's too hard, it's too big, it's too whatever. And so you reprogram that by another thing I'll tell you can do, keeping what I like to call an evidence of success log. So write it down. Every time you see that you've done something that you once thought was impossible, keep a log of that, keep track of that, and go back and read that, because that becomes a reminder to you of things that you once thought were impossible and you've done them. And so it gives you the strength, it gives you the reminders you need to push beyond those moments when you feel like you're limited and that you can't do something. And so with that, this is just a short conversation, a short talk to talk about limiting beliefs. There are tons of things that, I do with people that I'm working with to help them really press past this. I mean, I talked about all of those experiences and all of those areas in your life that they probably could stem from. You probably need to work through those one by one. So oftentimes there's one that I'll talk about that really has a tight grip on how we show up and how we move forward. And those are the money stories that we have in our lives. And so oftentimes we don't even think about how we're showing up is related to how we see money. And so it's interesting in the work I do with executives, when I have them look at their money stories, initially they're like, why are we talking about money stories? Because money stories really speak clearly to what we think is possible, why we think it's possible, or why we think it's not possible for us. They also show us the connections we have between who we are and the worth that's associated with our very being, which there's nothing that we can ever do or not do that makes us worthy or not worthy. It's simply a God-given right that we have access to certain things because of just our divine connection. And so when things get in the way that make us feel like we can't have, or we can't be, or we can't do, we've got to identify where is that coming from. Again, going back to the source of where those things are coming from. And a lot of times the source of that disbelief is stemming from a relationship we have with money. It could be a relationship we have with people that are close to us. You know, I say all the time that the relationship we have with our parents, those really are reflective relationships that we develop early on in our lives that allow us to see either that things are available for us, that we're protected, that we're safe, that we're provided for. And so whatever those relationships are, we subconsciously create a translation as to what that type of relationship now means in our work, in our life, and in our relationships with other people. And so those are just some of the things that, you know, I would encourage you to look at, and I would encourage you to try to unpack as it relates to these limiting beliefs, because they will show up, not when they show up. They will show up in how you live, and if you're finding yourself in a position where you're leading and you're shaping the, you know, the work and the lives of others, it's going to show up in your leadership. And so that's one of those, you know, really unconventional tools that I use that really helps someone go from where they are today to where they really want to be at any given moment in time. And so, you know, if you're really going to create and make those bold moves, you've got to understand who you are and how you could be limited by those things that you believe, or those things that you have ingrained in your psyche and in your subconscious that really shape how you show up. So with that, I'm going to go to the chat section and see what questions do we have today. Let's see. So what questions do you have for me? I'm here where we're looking for your questions, your comments, anything you want to share or anything you want to ask. All right. Well, if there are no questions or comments you have, I want to remind you, and we want to highlight the partnership that we have with Feeding South Florida. And it's a wonderful partnership that allows us to make sure that families that may not have the means to feed themselves, or may not have the means to, you know, have the nourishment they need from food, this partnership allows us to do that. So please feel free to support us, and we will appreciate that support. You can also follow us on social media, and follow us at the Carillon, and there's my information as well on social media for you to stay tuned to the other conversations that we will have during the month of October. I'm going to be doing a whole series of things as it relates to self-awareness, and how we really use self-awareness to help us create the impact and the outcomes that we want. Because oftentimes it's not that we don't want to show up a certain way. We may not always understand the impact that we have on others, and the impact of what we do, and how it really translates to how we show up. So I see that Chelsea has a question. I see that Brett has a question. So I'm going to start with Cheryl. Can you repeat the ways of rewiring? Sure, Cheryl. So some of the ways you can rewire are, first of all, you've got to identify what are those beliefs, Cheryl. And once you've identified those beliefs, you rewire them by starting to reframe those thoughts in a way that allows you to shift your thinking in incremental ways. I like to say micro movements create bold moves. And so you're not going to go from one extreme to the other. So make incremental shifts that allow you to start to reprogram and speak differently, and change your dialogue around how you show up in your mind about the things that you desire and you want, that might not feel like they're within reach to you right now. So Brett is asking, How to stay positive while waiting for a diagnosis. Oh, Brett, first of all, my prayers are with you. And the way you stay positive during a diagnosis is to believe and see yourself in your healthiest state of being. So not to believe and wait for a diagnosis to tell you if you're healthy, but to believe that you are healthy and to know that whatever that diagnosis is a signal and a symptom that allows you to know that there's something your body needs that you may not have been giving it, and there's something you may have been limiting yourself from having, and that diagnosis is an opportunity for you to re-nourish your body and really revitalize your entire being. So I hope that's helpful. See yourself in your healthiest state and start to live from the place of your healthiest state and not just wait on it. Right? What would someone with the healthiest diagnosis live like? Would you be exercising? Would you be meditating? And so those are other things that you can do during this time to help you really center in and really get grounded in what it is that you want to have as the ultimate state of your life. Hi, Chelsea. You're asking, how do you suggest one tackles the money self-limiting belief? Chelsea, that's a deep one. And so I don't know if you heard some of the things that I was saying, but when you have limiting beliefs around money, you really got to map your money stories and understand what do those stories mean and how have those stories created limitations for you. I do something called a power hour where that's one of the things we could work through in the power hour. So if you're really interested in going deeper in that, I have limited availability, but I do think that there's some opportunity for me to kind of talk that through with you and give you some more, one-on-one guidance with that, if that's something you're interested in. Hi, Desiree. She's saying, I have found that being laid off and the changes of the year have given me new freedom to explore new life, even though in some ways I have less than ever. You know what, Desiree, there's always opportunity. And sometimes we focus on what it is we might be losing when that opportunity also gives us a great space for gain. And so I love that you said that. Think about all of the things that you may have, and you probably said to yourself, man, if I had more time, I would do this. Or, you know what? I can't start that now because I'm focused on this, or it's too late to do that. Or, you know what, I don't want to start there now. You have the freedom. And so from a place of being free, you can create whatever you desire. Okay. All right. Well, those are some great questions. If there are other things that you're thinking of, please send us a message, connect, and we'll be more than happy to talk with you more. Melinda, I hope you got connected. I'm sorry that your sound wasn't working. Until the next Carillon Conversation, I'm Dr. Shanequa Fleming, and it's been my pleasure to share this with you.